You're listening to Reverie, True Crime, your gateway to the darkest corners of human nature, where we expose the hidden truths of human depravity. These harrowing stories serve as a sobering reminder to keep our senses keen and our awareness sharp, for predators lurk in unexpected places, patiently waiting and observing. Join us as we unravel mysteries, explore motives, and seek justice for victims as we bring awareness to these cases. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to Reverie True Crime. I'm your host, Paige. Before we begin today's episode, I want to give you a warning. This case is very disturbing, not just because of the violence, but because of what happened after. What you're about to hear is the story of a young woman whose death was ruled one way by medical examiners and another way by nearly every independent expert who's examined the evidence. This is a case that will make you question everything you thought you knew about death investigations, who decides the truth, and what happens when a family refuses to accept an answer that makes no sense. This is part one of a two-part series on the case of Ellen Greenberg. Let's get started. It's January 26th, 2011, and a nor'easter is tearing through Philadelphia, blanketing the city in white. Schools are closing early. People are rushing home before the roads become impassable. In the Montauk neighborhood, in a modern high-rise called Venice Lofts, overlooking the Schuylkill River at 4601 Flat Rock Road, a 27-year-old first-grade teacher named Ellen Greenberg is heading home from work. She's made sure all of her students got rides home safely. She stops for gas at a station on Umbria Street, topping off her tank so her fuel lines won't freeze in the storm. By 1:26 p.m., according to her credit card records, she's done at the gas station and heading to apartment 603, the sixth-floor unit that she shares with her fiancé. 5 hours later, Ellen will be found dead on her kitchen floor, with 20 stab wounds to her body, 10 of them to the back of her neck and head, and a 10-inch serrated kitchen knife buried 4 inches deep into her chest, penetrating 10 centimeters into her heart. The Philadelphia medical examiner will call it suicide. Ellen's parents will spend the next 14 years or more fighting that impossible conclusion. This is the story of Ellen Greenberg, a case that asks a question so fundamental it seems absurd. Can someone stab themselves 20 times and have it called suicide? And if the answer is no, then what really happened in apartment 603? Ellen Ray Greenberg was born on June 23, 1983 in New York City. She was the only child of Josh and Sandy Greenberg, their precious daughter, the one they'd always hoped for. The Greenbergs had wanted a big family, but medical complications meant Ellen would be their only child. So they poured everything into her. In 1994, when Ellen was 11, the family moved from New York to Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where Sandy had roots. Josh was a periodontist, and Sandy worked as a dental hygienist. Ellen naturally had perfect white teeth, but there was something else perfect about Ellen, her spirit. Friends and family describe her as bubbly, loving, and compassionate, the kind of person who brought people together from completely different worlds. Camp friends, high school friends, college friends, they all became friends themselves because of Ellen. Sandy later said, quote, "She was a really fun, adorable, very loving, bubbly young woman with a bright future ahead of her." Ellen attended Susquehanna Township schools, where she played tennis like her mother and grandmother before her. She was a girly girl, friends said, someone who didn't like getting dirty and who didn't like the sight of blood. At Penn State University, Ellen majored in communications and worked as a lionizer, introducing football players and their parents to the campus, even helping out on the field. She loved Penn State. She loved the energy, the community, and the tradition. She was close with her friends from Penn State, so close that they all remained friends with each other because of her. Ellen had that gift of bringing people together from completely different worlds. Initially, Ellen thought she might become a speech pathologist, but after graduating from Penn State, she realized that wasn't her calling. So she attended Temple University and Chestnut Hill College at night to earn her teaching credentials. She'd found her purpose, teaching first grade, working with young children who were just beginning their educational journey. By 2011, Ellen was teaching at Juniata Park Academy in Philadelphia. Her students adored her. She used creative methods to engage young minds, and she was exactly where she wanted to be in her career. And her personal life? That seemed equally promising. In 2007, Ellen met Sam Goldberg through a mutual friend on a blind date. Sam was a television producer, ambitious, organized, high energy. He worked in sports programming, first for NBC Sports in Connecticut, then for Comcast Sportsnet in Philadelphia. They dated for 3 years. In the summer of 2010, during a trip to California, Sam proposed to Ellen on the beach. She said yes. They set their wedding date for August 13th, 2011 at the Hotel Hershey in Hershey, Pennsylvania. Save the date cards went out. Ellen was planning the details with her friends, shopping for bridesmaids' dresses. The couple moved to a 6th-floor apartment at Venice Lofts in Manayunk, a 2-bedroom with sweeping views of the city. Everything, from the outside, looked perfect. Beneath the surface, something was changing. In the fall of 2010, Ellen started a new teaching position. The transition was harder than she had expected. She was feeling overwhelmed and stressed. Between the demands of a new job and the pressure of wedding planning, Ellen began experiencing significant anxiety. Her friend, Erica Hamilton, who had known Ellen since they were kids and went to Penn State together, noticed the change. Ellen reached out to her often because Erica had dealt with similar anxiety. Erica recalled, quote, "She had reached out to me a lot because I had dealt with that same thing," end quote. Ellen started seeing a psychiatrist and was prescribed Klonopin and Ambien for anxiety and insomnia. But there was something odd about their conversations, Erica said. Ellen seemed worried about confidentiality. She was concerned that her therapist might break patient confidentiality. Quote, "There was a point where she had gotten really concerned about the counselor breaking confidentiality. I said, 'Ellen, you can go into that therapist and tell them anything you want to. The only time that they would have to break confidentiality is if you had this grand plan to hurt yourself or hurt somebody else.'" End quote. That led to the only direct conversation they ever had about self-harm. Erica said, quote, "I specifically remember point blank asking her, 'Do you feel that stressed out that you are having those kind of thoughts?' And she laughed. She was like, 'No, absolutely not. I just feel anxious.'" End quote. Ellen sent text messages to her friends and family in those final months. On January 8th, 2011, she texted her mother, quote, "I'm starting the med. I know you don't understand, but I can't keep living with feeling this way." Another text to her parents says, "I want to leave this place. Get me out." But her psychiatrist would later tell police that Ellen was happy in her relationship. There were no signs of abuse and no suicidal ideations, just managed anxiety, the kind that 40 million Americans experience. Ellen was also, according to multiple friends, excited about her wedding. She was looking forward to marriage and starting a family. She loved children. This was her dream. On Saturday, January 22nd, 2011, 4 days before her death, Ellen went dress shopping with a close friend for bridesmaids' dresses. While they were shopping, Ellen began crying. She apologized, quote, "I'm so sorry. I know I'm not myself, but I'll get it together." End quote. Was this anxiety about work, about the wedding, or something else? 3 days later, on January 25th, Ellen received a text from a friend asking if she would be getting out early the next day because of the impending snowstorm. Ellen replied, "Thank goodness." She had no idea those would be among her last words. On January 26th, 2011, it was a Wednesday. The nor'easter everyone had been tracking was there. Ellen Greenberg went to work that morning at Juniata Park Academy, but by midday the snow was falling heavy. Schools across Philadelphia were closing early. At noon, Ellen texted a friend, quote, "Yeah, are you getting out early?" At 1:15 p.m., Ellen left work. She stopped for gas at a station on Umbria Street, not far from Venice Lofts. She was being careful, making sure her tank was full so her fuel lines wouldn't freeze. By 1:26 p.m., according to her credit card records, Ellen was done at the gas station. She headed home to apartment 603. That afternoon, around 4:45 p.m., Sam Goldberg left their apartment to go to the gym. Venice Lofts had a gym on the first floor of the building. Security footage shows him entering the gym at approximately 4:54:37 p.m. 15 seconds after 5:30, security footage shows Sam leaving the gym. This is where the timeline becomes crucial and contested. According to Sam's account, when he returned to the sixth floor around 5:30 p.m., he found the apartment door secured with a swing bar latch from the inside. This is the kind of latch you might find in a hotel room, a security bar that prevents the door from opening even if you have a key. The door to apartment 603 was tan-colored, with the number 603 clearly visible, and a Jewish prayer in a glass container, a mezuzah, was affixed to the right of the door frame. Sam said he used his key, but the door wouldn't open more than a crack. He knocked, and he called Ellen's phone. He sent text messages. "Hello? Open the door. I'm getting pissed. What the fuck?" He emailed her. He shouted through the crack in the door. And still no response. For the next hour, Sam says he tried desperately to reach Ellen. He went back down to the lobby. He called her repeatedly. He texted, "Ellen, please let me in." At approximately 6:00 p.m., Sam consulted with Philip Hanton, the security guard on duty. Hanton called Ellen's phone twice at 6:07 and 6:10. Still no answer. Then Sam made 2 critical phone calls before he called 911. At 6:26 p.m., Sam called his cousin, Kamian Schwartzman, and put him on speaker so his uncle, James Schwartzman, could listen in. Both men are attorneys. James wasn't just any attorney, he was a prominent Philadelphia defense attorney, a former prosecutor, and at that time the vice chairman of the board of directors of SEPTA. He would later become president judge of the Pennsylvania Court of Judicial Discipline, the court responsible for hearing judicial misconduct cases across the state. The Schwartzmans, according to their later account through their own attorney, told Sam to ask the security guard for help. When that didn't work, they advised him to break down the door. At 6:32 p.m., security footage shows Sam entering the elevator alone. At 6:33 p.m., Sam called 911.
Help! I need a murder now. I just walked into my apartment. My fiance's on the floor with blood everywhere.
What is the address?
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please come. Help.
4601
Flat Rock Road.
Is this a house or apartment?
Oh no. Oh no.
Apartment.
It's an apartment.
What apartment number?
Please hurry, please.
Where is she bleeding from?
I don't know. I can't tell.
No. So you have to calm yourself down in order to get you some help.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I'm looking at her right now. I can't see anything. There's nothing broken. She's bleeding. Ellie!
You don't know where she's bleeding from? Can't see
Ellie!
where the blood's coming from?
I think her head. I think she hit her head, I think. But it's everywhere.
Okay,
it's everywhere.
Think she might have fallen? Do you know what happened?
She may have slipped. There's blood on the table. Her face is a little purple.
Okay, hold on for rescue for her. Stay on the phone.
Philadelphia Fire Department 842. What's the address? No.
4601 Flat Rock Road. Please hurry.
4601 Flat Rock?
Yes.
What's wrong?
I went downstairs to go work out. I came back up. The door was latched. My fiance's inside. She wasn't answering. So after about a half hour, I decided to break it down. I see her now just on the floor with blood. She's not responding.
Okay. Is she breathing? Look at her chest. I need you to calm down, and I need you to look at her chest. It's really.
I really don't think she is.
Listen to me. Someone's on the way. Look at her chest. Is she flat on her back?
She's on her back. So I bring her.
Look at her chest and tell me if it's going up and down, up and down.
I don't see her moving.
Okay. Do you know how to do CPR?
I don't.
Okay. I can tell you what to do. Okay, until they get there. I want you to keep her flat on her.
God.
Hello.
Yeah, hi, okay.
Are you willing to do CPR with me over the phone until they get there?
I have to, right?
Okay, so get her flat on her back, bare her chest, okay? You want to rip her shirt off. Okay? Kneel down by her side.
Oh, my God. Ellie, please.
Listen, you can't freak out, sir, because you
okay, I'm trying not to. Her shirt won't come off. It's a zipper. Oh, my God, she stabbed herself.
Where?
She fell with a knife. Oh, no, her knife's sticking out.
Her what?
There's a knife sticking out of her heart.
Oh, she stabbed herself?
I guess so. I don't know where she fell on it. I don't know.
Okay, well, don't touch it.
Okay, so I just let her here now? I mean, what do I do?
No, I mean, you can't. If the knife is in her chest, it's going to be kind of hard for you to do CPR at this time.
Oh, no. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Police, which operator?
277.
Is someone coming here?
Yes, they are. You said 4601 Flat Rock, right?
Yes.
Okay, someone's on the way. And the knife is still inside?
Wait, so what?
The knife is still inside of her?
Yes, I didn't take it out.
Was it her chest or what area?
It's
in her chest. It looks like it's right in her heart.
Okay, someone's on the way out there. Okay, just get.
Oh my God! Okay,
how old is she?
She's 27.
27, and there's no sign of life at all.
No, please don't be. What?
Pinch her under her arm and tell me if she responds to pain.
Ellie. She's not. Her hands are still warm. I don't know what that means, but there's blood everywhere. I mean.
I know, but you can't, and the knife is still inside of her. How far? Can you see how far it went in?
It looks pretty deep.
Okay.
It looks it's a long knife.
Don't touch anything.
Yeah, don't touch anything, okay?
I'm not touching anything. I can't believe this, though.
So wait, it was just you there with her?
We're the only ones here.
And she ran in the door, you said latched it shut?
No, I went downstairs to work out, and when I came back up, the door was latched.
Oh.
Like it was, it wasn't like it was, it was like locked from the inside, and I'm yelling, so I'm
Was
yelling
your house
and
broken into?
No.
So there's no sign of a break-in?
No sign of a break-in at all. I mean, there will be when you get here because I had to break the latch, but to get in.
Okay, 4601 Flat Rock, and this is a house, right?
It's an apartment. Flat Rock apartment.
Okay, that'll help.
Oh my God. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bye.
Help was on the way. Medics arrived at 6:36 p.m. They found Sam seated in the 6th floor hallway outside the apartment, wearing a blue t-shirt and gray sweatpants. Inside apartment 603, they found Ellen Greenberg slumped against the kitchen cabinets, her head and shoulders propped against the lower cabinet doors near the stove. The apartment was well kept, clean, a 2-bedroom unit with modern appliances and hardwood floors. On the kitchen counter sat a strainer filled with fresh blueberries and a freshly sliced orange, as if Ellen had been preparing fruit when something happened. There was no evidence of a struggle. Furniture and items appeared in place. Nothing was obviously missing or disturbed. There were numerous valuables present: money, keys, 3 laptop computers, one in the kitchen on the island, which was Sam's, one in the master bedroom on the floor, surrounded by wedding materials, which was Ellen's personal laptop, and one on a desk in an additional bedroom with teaching materials, which was Ellen's work computer. Ellen's cell phone was later recovered from the bathroom. The last text message on it was sent at 3:47 p.m. Ellen was lying supine, on her back, seated on the kitchen floor, slumped downward and resting on her lower back and buttocks near the corner cabinets. Her head was turned to the right and tilted slightly forward, with her chin resting on her right shoulder and the right side of her hand resting against the cabinet face. Her arms were extended parallel to her body, with both hands rotated slightly inward from the anatomical position. Her legs were extended with her feet rotated outward, pointing west, while her head faced slightly north. She was wearing a dark gray hooded zip-up sweatshirt over a dark gray t-shirt, light gray sweatpants tucked into her boots, underwear, and tan Ugg boots. All were stained with blood. Her face was covered in blood. A pair of eyeglasses lay on the floor to her right. A black hair tie, a scrunchie, was on her right wrist. In her left hand, she was clutching a white towel. The towel was mostly pristine, not visibly bloodstained despite the massive amount of blood at the scene. This detail would later strike investigators as odd. How could Ellen have held a clean towel through 20 stab wounds? And there, protruding from her chest, was a kitchen knife, a 10-inch serrated blade with a 12.5 centimeter blade embedded 10 centimeters deep, 4 inches, directly into her heart. Nearby, in the sink adjacent to Ellen's body, were 2 clean kitchen knives, no blood on them. A knife block on the counter was tipped on its side, and also no blood. At 6:40 p.m., paramedics pronounced Ellen Greenberg dead. The Philadelphia police arrived and began their investigation. From that moment, from the very first minutes, something went terribly, inexplicably wrong. Here's what should have happened. The police should have treated the scene as a potential homicide. They should have called in the crime scene unit. They should have documented everything, photographed every angle, collected every piece of evidence, tested blood patterns in other areas of the apartment with luminol to detect any cleanup attempts, examined the pillows where blood had been found, and secured the scene until a thorough investigation could be completed. Guy DeAndrea, a former Philadelphia prosecutor who won a murder conviction in the so-called Craigslist killer trial in 2015, reviewed Ellen's case at the request of a colleague who knew the Greenbergs. He was stunned by what he found, or rather, what investigators failed to do. DeAndrea later said in a deposition for the Greenbergs' second lawsuit, quote, "The blood in the other areas of the apartment should have been tested. There should have been testing on the floor and cabinetry. Luminol and other testing could have been performed." Why is that important? Well, if they found any cleaning solution or any blood that would have been cleaned up, and the room would have lit up if that happened with the testing materials they have, then they would know definitively that someone had at least attempted to clean up the apartment, which obviously Ellen would not have been able to do in the state that she was in, meaning dead. End quote. None of that happened. Here is what actually happened. The police treated Ellen's death as a suicide from the very beginning. They didn't call the crime scene unit. They didn't test blood evidence in other areas of the apartment. They released the scene after their initial response. Why? Because they said the door was latched from the inside. Sam had to break it down. Therefore, Ellen must have been alone, and therefore it must have been suicide. The apartment's front door latch, a common swing bar door guard, was broken, with the screws on the door loose, obviously forced in when in a locked position. At approximately 10:30 p.m. on January 26th, everyone, including Sam, left the 6th floor except for one police officer who guarded the door to Unit 603. At 11:25 p.m., Sam arrived by police transport at the Northwest Detectives Division for questioning. He gave his statement. By evening's end, he was released. Early the next morning, January 27th, Melissa Ware, the senior property manager at Venice Lofts, received a phone call. It was from a male relative of Sam's requesting access to the apartment to retrieve personal items for Ellen's funeral. Melissa Ware called the Philadelphia Police Department. They said there were no entry restrictions. In fact, they recommended hiring a crime scene cleanup service. Without hesitation, the family agreed to pay for the cleaning. Before the cleanup, Melissa supervised a video recording of the apartment to document its condition. Then, the crime scene cleanup crew went to work, professionally sanitizing apartment 603. After the apartment was cleaned, Melissa called James, yes, James Schwartzman, Sam's uncle, the prominent attorney. He showed up and removed items from the apartment: a suit, Ellen's purse, her cell phone, and her laptop. Let that sink in for a moment. The uncle of the person who discovered the body was allowed to enter the death scene and remove the victim's electronic devices before police could execute a search warrant. The next day, January 28th, when police returned with a search warrant to collect evidence in what they now suspected might be a homicide investigation, they discovered the kitchen had been cleaned. Critical evidence had been washed away, and Ellen's personal electronics, All the devices that might contain crucial information had been taken by the family of her fiancé. Police contacted James Schwartzman and retrieved the items, but the chain of custody had been broken from the very beginning. This would become one of the most controversial aspects of the case. Years later, Ellen's father, Josh Greenberg, would say, quote, "Things were removed from the crime scene without our permission. The chain of custody was broken from the very beginning when Jim Schwartzman removed computers, electronics, and my daughter's handbag." End quote. A representative for James Schwartzman would respond that police gave him permission to take Ellen's belongings. The rep denied removing Ellen's handbag, but admitted to removing her computers and cell phones. Quote, "The door was damaged and unsecure, and he took out items that he thought might be stolen." But by the time police forensic investigators could properly examine the scene, critical evidence was gone. The apartment had been sanitized. The chain of custody was compromised. And yet, somehow, none of this seemed to matter to the investigators because they had already made up their minds. On January 27th, 2011, the same day the apartment was being professionally cleaned, Dr. Marlon Osborne performed Ellen's autopsy at the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's office. What he found was nothing short of shocking. Ellen had 20 stab wounds, 10 to her chest, abdomen, and stomach, 10 to the back of her head and neck, plus 11 bruises in various stages of healing on her right arm, abdomen, and right leg. The wounds were devastating. There was a knife embedded in her left chest, penetrating 10 centimeters deep, striking the aortic arch. Her upper left lung collapsed. Both chest cavities filled with blood, which is called bilateral hemothorax. She also had multiple stab wounds to the back of her neck, some penetrating the cervical spinal cord at the C2-C3 level. 2 deep stabs had penetrated Ellen's brain, severing cranial nerves. An incised wound on the right occipital scalp, not a stab, but a deep cut, as if someone had struck her with the sharp edge of a knife. Some wounds were shallow, and what forensic pathologists call hesitation wounds, tentative cuts that can precede a fatal injury, but others were deep, forceful, and deadly. The blade had struck bone. There was subarachnoid hemorrhage over the cerebellar hemisphere and vermis. Dr. Osborne noted something else. Ellen had no defensive wounds, no cuts on her hands or forearms suggesting that she had tried to fight off an attacker, no injuries to her tongue or oral cavity, and no fractures to facial bones, clavicles, sternum, or pelvic bones. Also, no signs of a struggle. But there was one more detail that would become crucial later. Upon further examination of Ellen's body, Dr. Osborne found that there were no defense injuries to the hands, wrists, or forearms. The right hand is closed in a loose fist. Toxicology results showed prescription medications in Ellen's system: Ambien, Klonopin, and Xanax, all medications that are commonly prescribed for anxiety and sleep disorders. On January 27th, Dr. Osborne made his determination. He wrote in his report that Ellen had been stabbed by another person. He ruled her death a homicide. While the Greenberg family were devastated and grieving, they were told at Ellen's funeral that her death had been ruled a homicide. Josh Greenberg announced it during his eulogy. For a brief moment, they thought there would be justice, that there would be an investigation and answers. Then everything changed. On March 7th, 2011, just over 5 weeks after Ellen's death, the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office made an announcement that stunned Ellen's parents. The manner of death had been changed from homicide to suicide. No explanation, no warning. Josh and Sandy Greenberg learned about it from media reports. How does a medical examiner change a homicide ruling to suicide, especially in a case with 20 stab wounds, 10 of them to the back of the neck? According to later court testimony, Dr. Osborne changed the ruling after conferring with law enforcement officials. The police had been adamant from the beginning that this was suicide. They pointed to the latched door, the lack of defensive wounds, the lack of signs of an intruder, and Ellen's anxiety medication. Tom Brennan, a retired 25-year state police veteran working for the Greenberg family, recalled a conference call with Dr. Osborne years later. During that call, Osborne admitted something startling. Brennan testified, quote, "He said he changed it at the insistence of the police because they said there was a lack of defensive wounds. I was surprised. I asked him, since when do the police have anything to do with making a medical decision regarding the cause and manner of death?" End quote. In his deposition years later, Dr. Osborne would testify that he changed the manner of death based on several factors, including the spinal cord examination that he had arranged, the lack of incapacitating drugs in Ellen's system, no signs of an intruder, the broken door, Sam Goldberg's statements, and police findings. But there was one critical piece of evidence that seemed to seal the deal for Dr. Osborne. The claim that a security guard had witnessed Sam breaking down the door, confirming that Ellen had been alone inside the apartment. Dr. Osborne testified during his deposition, quote, "If there was any doubt that the fiancé was escorted by the security guard, or if it was untrue what he was being told, then this cannot be a suicide." The Philadelphia police held fast to their suicide determination. Their reasoning? Ellen had been alone when she died. The door was latched from the inside, and Sam Goldberg had been witnessed by a security guard breaking down the door. Except that wasn't quite true. In 2021, security footage emerged that showed Sam entering the elevator alone at 6:32 p.m., just 1 minute before he called 911. No security guard was with him. Philip Hanton, the security guard on duty that night, signed a written declaration stating that he did not accompany Sam to the 6th floor and was not present when Sam entered the apartment. He was in the lobby, and he never witnessed Sam break down the door at all. So the police's foundational claim that a witness saw Sam break down the door, proving Ellen was alone, was false. Years later, an analysis of phone records by CNN would also appear to contradict the claims by Sam's two relatives, his cousin Kamian Schwartzman and his uncle James, that they had been on the phone with Sam as he broke the door down. The phone records did not match their account of the timeline. But by 2011, the ruling was final. Ellen Greenberg's death was suicide. Case closed. For Josh and Sandy Greenberg, this was unconscionable. Their bubbly, loving daughter, who didn't like the sight of blood, had supposedly stabbed herself 20 times, including 10 times in the back of her head and neck, then left a knife sticking out of her chest? No, they didn't believe it. They wouldn't believe it. And so began their now 14-year fight for justice. The Greenbergs were not going to accept the official story. They hired their own experts, some of the most renowned forensic pathologists and investigators in the country. First, they consulted Dr. Cyril H. Wecht, the Pittsburgh forensic pathologist who famously challenged the single bullet theory in the JFK assassination. Dr. Wecht reviewed Ellen's case and issued a scathing report. Quote, "It is my professional opinion that the manner of death of Ellen Greenberg is strongly suspicious of homicide." He noted the unusual locations of the wounds, particularly those to the back of the neck. He pointed out that suicidal stab wounds are rarely multiple, and stab wounds to the back are especially uncommon in suicide cases. He concluded, quote, "I do not know how they wrote this off as a suicide." Then they brought in Dr. Henry C. Lee, the renowned forensic scientist who testified in the O.J. Simpson trial. In 2018, Dr. Lee and his colleague Elaine Pagliaro reviewed the case files and bloodstain patterns. Their conclusion was, quote, "The number and types of wounds and bloodstain patterns observed are consistent with a homicide scene." Detective Scott Illman, a crime scene reconstructionist hired by the Greenbergs, studied the photos. He found blood trails suggesting Ellen's body had been moved. The blood patterns didn't match the position in which her body was found. In his report, Illman wrote, quote, "The bloodstains on her face are inconsistent with the position in which she was found. Specifically, the bloodstain flow pattern diagonally across her forehead from the right to the left and terminating in the left eyebrow would move against the law of gravity. It is my opinion that the bloodstain evidence in this case is inconsistent with the position in which Miss Greenberg was found." Dr. Henry Lee and his colleague, Elaine Pagliaro, also noted this discrepancy in their analysis. Quote, "The blood is flowing in different directions on her face. This could mean she moved after receiving the initial bleeding injuries to her head." End quote. Or, Brennan suggested, it could mean someone moved her body. Another peculiar detail that supported this theory is when the EMS arrived, they observed that Ellen was seated in the corner of the kitchen with coagulated blood running horizontally from her nose to her ear. This positioning indicated that she was likely initially lying flat on the ground when she was stabbed, not sitting upright against the cabinets as she was found. But there was more. Blood was also found on pillows in the apartment, indicating that Ellen may have been injured in a different location before her body ended up in the kitchen. The bloodstain pattern suggested movement. They suggested staging. Perhaps the most damning evidence came from the wounds themselves. Dr. Wayne K. Ross, a forensic pathologist based in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, who has performed more than 13,000 autopsies, examined the case for the Greenbergs. He focused on the stab wounds to Ellen's brain and spinal cord. Dr. Ross wrote, quote, "There was evidence of a stab wound which penetrated the cranial cavity and severed the cranial nerves in the brain. As a result, Ellen would experience severe pain, cranial nerve dysfunction, and traumatic brain signs and symptoms, including numbness, tingling, irregular heartbeat, bradycardia, respiratory depression, neurogenic shock, and impaired loss of consciousness." In other words, after sustaining those wounds to her brain and spinal cord, Ellen would have been incapacitated. She couldn't have kept stabbing herself. Dr. Ross conducted a test. He had a police officer of similar size and build to Ellen try to replicate the stab wounds using 3D photogrammetry, a technology that recreates the exact angles and depths of the wounds. Quote, "We gave her the knife to see if she could actually contort herself in these positions. And she could not. Some of the wounds were biomechanically impossible to self-inflict, but there was something even more disturbing. In 2019, Dr. Lindsay Emery, a neuropathologist at the Philadelphia Medical Examiner's Office, examined a sample of Ellen's cervical spine that had been preserved after the autopsy. This examination wouldn't have happened at all if not for the Greenberg family's civil suit, which had prompted a closer look at the evidence. What she found stopped her cold. There were 3 injuries to Ellen's spinal column. One cut to the spinal cord tissue itself had been done during the autopsy. It's a routine part of the examination process. But there were 2 other cuts that were different. One was to the bone and ligaments in the back of Ellen's spinal column, and a corresponding cut to the dura, the protective sheath covering the spinal cord. These were, quote, bona fide sharp force injuries from a knife. But here's what made Dr. Emery's finding explosive. As she testified in her 2021 deposition, these cuts showed something unusual. No hemorrhaging. She explained, no hemorrhaging means no pulse. In other words, at least one of the stab wounds to Ellen's spine, which was a deep, forceful wound, appeared to have been inflicted after her heart had stopped beating. After she was already dead. Someone had stabbed Ellen's corpse. This finding was seismic. If Ellen was already dead when one of the wounds was inflicted, she clearly could not have inflicted it herself, which means someone else was there, which means suicide was impossible. But there's a twist to this story that makes it even more bizarre. Years earlier, shortly after Ellen's autopsy in 2011, Dr. Osborne had been concerned about the spinal cord injury. He wanted a second opinion, so he reached out to Dr. Lucy Rourke Adams, an eminent neuropathologist at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. But instead of having Dr. Rourke Adams come to the medical examiner's office for a formal examination, Dr. Osborne testified that he walked a section of Ellen's spinal cord over to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia in, quote, very heavy snow for what he called an informal, quote, curbside exam. According to Dr. Osborne's testimony, Dr. Rourke Adams did not do a microscopic examination. She just looked at it and told him the dura, which is the sheath covering the spinal cord, was cut, but not the spinal cord itself. Based on this informal assessment, Dr. Osborne felt more confident ruling the death a suicide, because if the spinal cord itself was not severed, Ellen could theoretically have continued stabbing herself. But Dr. Lindsay Emery's examinations years later, using proper microscopic analysis, told a different story, and it contradicted what Dr. Osborne claimed Dr. Rourke Adams had found. Dr. Emery later filed a declaration walking back her conclusion about the postmortem wound, saying there could be other explanations for the lack of vital response. But the doubt was planted. The question remained, How do you reconcile evidence of a postmortem stab wound with suicide? You can't. Then there were the bruises. Dr. Osborne's original autopsy report documented 11 bruises on Ellen's body in various stages of healing. Some were fresh, many were older. An outside pathologist working with the Greenberg family reviewed the autopsy photos. His conclusion was that the bruises, quote, were consistent with a repeated beating, end quote. Dr. Ross noted contusions on Ellen's neck and what appeared to be throat hemorrhaging. He also observed what looked like a, quote, mark over the front of the neck, which was consistent with a fingernail mark, and multiple bruises under the neck and in the strap muscles over the right side of the neck. He continued to write, the patterns were compatible with manual strangulation. There was also bruising on Ellen's forearms that could suggest her wrists had been restrained. But the official story, the one that Philadelphia Police and Medical Examiner's Office stood by, ignored all of this or explained it away. So let me ask you, after everything you've just heard, does Ellen Greenberg's death sound like suicide to you? 20 stab wounds, 10 to the back of her head and neck, bruises in various stages of healing, evidence that her body was moved, blood on pillows in another room, a crime scene that was cleaned before investigators could properly examine it, a fiance's uncle, a prominent defense attorney, who removed her computers and cell phone from the apartment. And yet on March 7th, 2011, the medical examiner changed the ruling from homicide to suicide. The Greenberg family, like Ellen's parents, Josh and Sandy, could not accept it. They would not accept it. And over the last 14 years, they have been fighting. In part 2, we'll follow that fight. We'll hear from the independent experts who said this couldn't possibly be suicide. We'll examine the forensic evidence that suggests Ellen may have been stabbed after she was already dead. We'll look at the legal battles that went all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and we'll explore the questions that still haunt this case today. Why was the investigation so badly botched from the beginning? Why did the medical examiner change his ruling? And if Ellen didn't kill herself, who did? Thank you so much for listening to part 1. Join me next time for part 2 of Ellen's case. I hope you're all doing well, and as always, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and take care of each other.
Thank you for listening to this episode. As we close out, let us not forget awareness is our greatest defense. In a world that can be dark and grim, vigilance is our beacon of hope. When it comes to the cases we have explored together that have remained unsolved, if you happen to hold a piece of the puzzle, dare to step forward. As author Lois McMaster Bujold once said, the dead cannot cry out for justice. It is a duty of the living to do so for them. Until we reconvene, my friends, stay vigilant and stay informed.